The pattern, power, and play system and model was created and designed so that I could take advantage of, number one, the opportunity I had to teach kids, and number two, understand the limits and time constraints with a lot of the athletes we work with today as instructors. Kids are hitting, fielding, they're having travel ball, whether that's 7-on-7, softball, AAU basketball. So the amount of time to develop and acquire skill is being limited. And so I wanted to develop and create a system of organization that allowed us to create the most optimal training sessions and learning environments for our athletes. And it's based off simplicity. One of my favorite things to say is based off of one of my colleagues, Seth, the FootDoctor, is easyology. We want to make things simple for the athlete, the parent, and the coach. And the pattern, power, and play system and training methods really does this for our athletes. So what pattern is it's the first step of modeling a session and an ability for an athlete to acquire a skill or a movement. So when we look at patterns, it is either to create, modify, or reinforce optimal movement patterns and positions. So when we have pattern level exercises and drills, we use these in the forms of isometrics, low body weight or low load movements that include high volume. And what we want to understand is that within our athletic performance, there are certain positions and alignments of our joints that give us the optimal ability to create explosiveness, to be stronger, to be faster. And so we have to take time to help an athlete understand these positions so that they know how to move into and out of these positions and they own them. Patterns can be dissected and broken down to very simple things. Can an athlete internally rotate their hip? If they can, then the drill I use is to help reinforce that needed attribute, because being able to move your hips and rotate them internally and externally is a very valuable tool when it comes to acceleration. So when we look at athletes, we look at what pattern do they need to possess from a skill standpoint and then from a performance standpoint. So if we're pitching or we're throwing, the overhand motion, that is a more technical skill as opposed to can an athlete drop step. But within those two same parameters, rotation of the spine or pelvic stability would be the pattern that we'd need to have optimally for both sets of sequences. So when we look at these two videos here, we see how we discern a pattern within this. The video on the left here would be considered what we get to. This is play. This is an agility-based drill where the athlete is reacting, and we've been working on drop step patterns. So we want to see if the drop step pattern and the ability to drop step comes out when we perform a drill that's reaction-based and is more play-like.
Back it. And go. Yellow. Drop. Good. Back it.
And so when we look at a drill like that, like I said, everything is happening chaotically. They're reactive. They're having to move. And then at the very end, we're asking for them to drop step and go get the ball. So we want to see if the patterning level exercises we did would be able to create that. So how would we structure that in the system? We begin by helping and understanding and seeing if the athlete could perform a pattern level drill that included exact details over how the athlete should rotate that hip to be able to drop step and create acceleration successfully.
And move. Rotate. Lean. Better.
So you hear the cues given: move, rotate, as in rotate the hip, lean. So they're leaning to create the body angle so that because of the rotation, when they attack the ground, they're going to unravel in the direction that they need to go to. And so that is how patterns lead to successful play. If I don't own the pattern outside of my sport, then you can't ask me to continually be good at something I don't own and I'm not taught outside of my sport. And so we want to give athletes, through the understanding of pattern level drills, the ability and the understanding that I possess this pattern, and this is what should happen in the moment I need to change direction, that I need to go receive the ball. Now, within our lessons or our overall programming, when we move on to a power type portion of either a drill or a skill, we're looking at drills and exercises that promote and increase qualities of their overall ability to produce force and the rate at which they can produce that force. And you have tons of things that fall in between those things. When we look at overall force application, that could mean drills and exercises that promote hypertrophy and that also promote overall power. And then we could also look at absorption. If I cannot create a max amount of force and increase my rate of force production if I don't have the ability to absorb what I'm creating. So when we look at skills like that, we base this off of, if I have good patterns, then I want to constantly add these two qualities to those patterns. And whether it's from a skill development side, where we're looking at the young lady in the second video in the second middle video over here in the pitching perspective, if we're looking at a skill like pitching, I want to promote hip extension and I want to promote good drive and explosiveness. So if we have an athlete that already displays these qualities, or we've done the patterning level drills to help them understand what these things feel like, then we can promote exercises that help reinforce and develop that. So when we look at that, we see that these conditions that we add, the tools we use can be bands, they can be sound, they can be loads in terms of kettlebells, and they can just be tempo. How quickly do I want an athlete to perform a drill? And those all fall under creating and developing the qualities of increased overall force production and rate of force production. And an example of that we can see here for the athlete over here on the left that's pitching. She's got good hip extension patterns and qualities. Now we want to be able to help her express that even more aggressively. So we watch and develop the drill. Working on violent hip explosion, we're using a band to add resistance. She has our pulsars on, learning to help increase stretch shortening cycle and develop the hips. And what that leads to is an ability to start to create and develop better extension from her actual pitching motion. We want to create that explosive quality. When we look at more of a movement type aspect, we saw the pattern level drills of internal rotation from the drop step. Now I can add power to it in various ways. One of them can be by adding height, like a depth drop, to increase their ability to get through the stretch shortening cycle.
Lift, fall, pattern.
And then another one can be tempo, increasing the tempo, rate of force development. Looking for those same qualities. Internal rotation, are we working through the hip, and is the foot and the hip agreeing from a pattern standpoint? And now we can add power to it in different forms. Now play within our lesson or within our programming is always the aspect of what we conclude. Play. If I'm working on the technical aspect of pitching, then the play motion is our full pitch. If I'm working through change of direction, agility, performance, then play is about creating a chaotic environment and understanding and creating and looking for, does the athlete perform the pattern when the environment is chaotic? And so the definition of play is just movement efficiency. We design or add drills that create a chaotic environment where the athlete has to perform the reactionary pattern and has to be transitioning in the manner of which we taught the pattern and added the power to. It's the ultimate test for us at all points, especially with our change of direction athletes. And so, like I said, if it's a skill aspect, play just becomes our full pitch. Did the patterns come out? And if we're working performance, change of direction, agility, just overall ability to be athletic, play things we're looking for there. All of that led up just to see if at the moment the stimulus of the ball came out, did our drop step pattern come out well, and did we execute it? And that's what play is. And so when we look at a full sequence, pattern, power, and play, that's how we develop athletes, and that's how we create a model and a system, whether it's in a one lesson frame or a month-long macro cycle of our training, to create and develop our athletes the best way possible. So now when we look at the system as a whole, it doesn't matter what we're doing. We decide on a specific pattern that athlete needs, and then we develop within the training session a sequence of exercise that is always focusing on that pattern, but it's building the power, and then it's testing to see if during play-like scenarios that pattern comes out. So everything we do from a skill performance standpoint, it's pattern. We create it, we look for it, we give cues, we teach it. We add power through plyometrics, depth, loads, implements, bands, and then we play.
Power, stick. Good.
And we always want to see if these comes out. And it doesn't matter whether it's a technical skill or it's more of our performance athletic-based platform. And whether we're teaching the drive portion of the pitch and looking for qualities of hip extension and shin ankles, or we're working the back end of the pitch where we're getting the athlete to understand how that land leg creates the ability for the hips to continue to rotate through the motion and finish through her pitch. Nothing changes. We're patterned.
Good. Turn quicker with that forearm. Quicker with that forearm. Good.
So we always work on the ability for the athlete to understand and give a feeling and understanding and context of what happens in the moment of that skill.
There, flop. Like this. It should just. That's how efficient. Like literally.
We create these understandings, these patterns and qualities that we want to exist. And then, once again, the play portion of it is going to be the pitch.
There you
go. Do we see the stability? Do we see these similar movements? Do we land? Does the hip start to rotate better? Does the front leg pull and the hamstring activate for us? And then when we look at pieces of information to where, okay, how do I add power to that? How does that make sense? Okay, I get the pattern aspect. Other implements, very similar, just like our med balls. It's the same pattern that we'd use. Now we're understanding how to throw the med ball with high force using the pattern we're developing.
Oh, good. Let it go a little sooner. Remember, let it go. Don't follow it with your hands. Let it go. You're trying to rotate as violently as possible. There you go.
And so those are the things we're looking at. And the pattern, power, and play system that I developed helps us make simple understandings of, do I understand what the pattern is that they're missing? And I just focus on that, because strengthening that pattern that exists not just in their skill, but also exists in their athletic performance is going to give me more bang for my buck. And in the education and the knowledge and awareness that they gain of being in that position, being in that alignment, helps to transcend into their other practice time, into their other skill instruction time. Because at the end of the day, I created a model and a system that was based off the limited amount of time we had with athletes and the ability to educate, learn, and bring overall awareness to where their actual athleticism can be brought out from. Most kids possess insane amounts of ability, but it's just the inability to express how their body works through space where they struggle. And we want to teach that. And having this system allows us to give them the patterns, to add power in specific ways, and then to constantly be testing to see if that pattern comes out during chaos or during their skill.